Yes. Yes.
Real life.
Mm.
Okay, so hello, how are you? Today we are gonna be discussing this topic about creativity, intuition, and related to the meditation process. Again, we're gonna be in this format, being Juan Pillon and me hosting these conversations that we are gonna have. We prepared some videos, some pictures, some things for you to enjoy to make it more enjoyable and appealing for you, and we are gonna be having this open talk. So I'm gonna introduce myself. My name is Farid Cortez. I'm from Colombia. I've been close to the organization for about 3 years, traveling with them. We have been traveling with LP Young for a while, and now I'm here in this long-term volunteer program, being able to develop these kind of episodes, if you like, of chapters. So I've been an artist for 10 years or so, entrepreneur for 5, and I've been in the creative field for around 7 years or more. So yeah, today we're gonna have this conversation. 1P.
Yes, muchas gracias. Are we going to talk in Spanish or in English? In English, yes, of course.
Okay.
I think we've been talking several times about creativity and meditation, but I think this is kind of the first time we're going to bring these conversations to a topic about intuition.
Yeah, I think that the meditation and the creativity is somehow very related. A lot of people relates to it. I know that, for example, in the trainings on the meditation, they really like to enjoy to develop this topic. So yeah, we are gonna be a little bit going deeper on that.
Okay. So if you just arrive before, you can share this video, you can click like, and also you can give us some comments. If you have any questions, you can ask us anytime. We have access to your questions, so we're going to be sure to give some answers to the questions as well. And if you can hear our voice properly, you can type +1, and don't forget to share this video with your friends, with people that you love, so that they have a chance to take a look at the videos as well.
Okay, so you're gonna begin talking about intuition and creativity, of course. So one of the questions that we want to discuss here is in Buddhism there are 3 ways of knowledge, right? Being that studying, observing, and direct knowledge. So LP, can you open this talk about
yes.
What is direct knowledge, these kind of understandings?
Well, the Lord Buddha said that there are mainly 3 ways to acquire knowledge. The first one is when you read a book, or when you listen to a lecture, when you browse internet or look at social media, you watch some videos. That is how you acquire knowledge that other people share with you. You know what they think about, you know what is happening. But somehow this knowledge doesn't provide any in-depth analysis, or maybe it won't actually give you the whole picture of what you want to know. The second layer or the second level is when you think about something, especially about that knowledge you just acquire from reading, from listening, thoroughly, many times over, and you think and then you contemplate on such knowledge. Eventually you have better understanding of what it is about and how this is going to be useful for you. Maybe you already have the answer of pros and cons about the situations, and you can make decisions based on a very careful contemplation of what it is about. But there is one more level of knowledge. In this knowledge, the Buddha said that the knowledge which just appears when your mind is clear. So when your mind is clear, it's like a glass of water. Before, the glass of water might have a lot of murky things in the water, but If we allow the water to be clear by not dropping any contamination, any more ink, and then the water gets clearer, everything in the water can easily be seen. So the knowledge that is already within us, we already have that connection with the whole universe. We just have it blinded, or we didn't actually find it because our mind is not ready to find it. And as a result, is one saying that when your mind is ready, a teacher appears. That is not just a physical teacher, but somehow the access to the greater knowledge when your mind is clear is called the direct knowledge, or in fact it could develop into the level that is called intuition.
Okay, so this comes to the topic of creativity and intuition. So we can begin by having a definition on creativity. Creativity is like this ability that we have to come out with new solutions, new ways to do the things, new ways to solve all problems. So it's related to create new things, like in these senses. Well, Bjorn was telling, we kind of connect to this source of like huge knowledge that is just present there. We only need to tap on this. So in this sense, like creativity is the search for those answers that are already present. We just need to find the right track, if you like. So yeah, so it'll be about this topic of creativity. So we need to understand that we need to be very creative again in our process, but we need to use our mind in a way that provides us with the right analysis of the topic. So of course we want to have this layer of intuition where non-rational processes are involved. We just know the things. Like when you have this certainty on something, you just know. However, in some decision process, you need to have both things. In one side, this fuel, like this drive to follow your intuition, and in the other side, the ability to be able to do the proper analysis, right? So in this sense, we would like to have this conversation about like analytic meditation. I have done a couple of analytic meditation. They are very useful because in those we don't like focus on like the breathing or the visualizations or something. What we do is kind of focus on one topic and actually thinking about that topic, but with a focused mind. Like we want to say, okay, this is going to be the conversation, this is going to be the topic, and we focus on that, and we do this kind of analytic meditation. So from your side, what would you like to share with us about that?
Well, from what I practice, we try to bring meditation into our daily life as much as we can. But we begin first with, we close our eyes, we meditate, and we keep our mind focused on just one thought. But this one thought doesn't have to be like a story or maybe your work at that moment. You're just going to think about something very simple, like even the sun, the moon, a crystal ball, or something very, very simple, so that your mind learns to stay with that thing for a long time. And if you keep practicing this longer and longer, somehow your mind will be used to staying in at just one thought. Normally, it won't be able to stay with one thought for a long time, maybe just 1 second or maybe a few seconds for many people. But if you keep practicing with meditation longer and longer, it is going to help you to stay with just one thought, just one thing, very relaxing manner. And that is going to bring this level of concentration into reality. It means that even though you are working, your mind will stay with just one thought. And it won't be distracted with so many other things. Can you imagine how powerful your mind will become if you can focus 100% of your attention on what you're doing without being distracted? Because as you know, normally there is research saying that we spend 45% of our time thinking about the past and another 45% of our time thinking about the future. That leaves only 10 or 15% for many people that can focus at the present. So somehow the way we practice meditation will allow the longer concentration, even deeper focus, and better clarity. And if you have such mind, whatever you think, whatever you work on, you will be able to be in that meditation state the whole time. And that is how I believe you can't really have that analytical meditation in everything that you do. When you are in a meeting, and even when you really work on your computer, in front of your computer, your mind is just there, and then it can really process the information really quickly without being distracted, being too emotional or very sensitive about different situations. You are just there in your zone on your own.
Okay, this is very important because we used to think about the mind, but sometimes I think we misunderstand the concept on what actually the mind is. Because, for example, in Western societies, the concept of the mind is very related to the brain, which of course plays a huge role on the phenomena of thinking, if you like.
Mm-hmm.
But in the Buddhist philosophy, we also understand that the mind is made by 5 aggregates as
Mm-hmm.
well. But we would like to know, like, in your perspective, from your studies and your wisdom, if mind is not the brain, like not the aggregates, not the thoughts or the act of thinking itself, what is that phenomena that we call the mind?
Well, basically, these 5 aggregates, one of them is about the body, 4 of them are about the mind. So you can see that how the Buddha paid more attention to the mind more than the body. Of course, he mentioned about the body, but the process of how the mind works, this comprise of four things, and I'm going to compare with a computer. Okay, if you compare with a computer, if you just talk about the word computer, then you think about something that helps you work, helps you access internet, and this day even your smartphone is a computer. But don't forget that a computer also has 2 parts, the hardware and the software, and they have to work together. Of course, if you have good software, but somehow you don't have a good hardware, then you won't be able to use and make the most of your time, of your availability, and how you use the computer. And if you have good hardware, but you don't have good software, that doesn't work either. Like in the past, we have very fast computer, but the operating system keeps crashing. That is not going to work, right? So somehow our human body has a part that is the software of the body. And this software of the body, the office, I can compare with, like the office. The office of the software is the brain, and the home of it is inside ourselves and at the center of the body. So this software of human body, we call it the mind. It is not the body. It is somehow your awareness, your consciousness, your feeling, your attention. Okay? And somehow your mind should not be infected with, for example, spams, viruses, or anything that will make the software doesn't work the way it's supposed to work. So even though you have a fast computer, you're going to make sure that you have good software as well. In this sense, we are going to be able to make the most of our computer for sure.
Okay. So it's very clear that what we call the mind, of course, is like made of several layers and like is related to a lot of things, from the body, the mind, the feelings, like all the things that we like kind of relate to that. However, it's very interesting how the states of creativity and intuition are related to some brain states. In Western science, we have these 5 states of the mind, which are like theta, beta, alpha, delta, and the last one, which I can't remember right now. But what happens is, like, when you enter in deep meditation, what you have is this kind of delta state. Like, is when your brain is emitting low frequency hertz waves, so that you begin to have a less activity, and you begin to have like this kind of interaction with a higher source of style. So we would like you to see this video that we prepared. No, first, sorry. Yeah, Nari, can you please put the symmetry video, please? Yeah. So yeah, excuse us. It's clear now that what we can call the mind is much more than we consider it to be. In the Western approach, as we were saying, the brain plays a critical role in our understanding of it. Even though we know that there is much more to understand the mind than only observing the brain, there are actually several keys to understand our psyche, including the brain waves. Our brain has up to 5 states where it can function, and those states are related to certain waves, patterns measured in hertz. Those states are known as beta, alpha, theta, and delta. Beta is a normal level of consciousness. Alpha is relaxed awareness. Theta is a state of meditative trance, and delta is a state of transcendental experience. Of these 4 mental states, alpha is the level that helps you learn, memorize, interact, and read the thoughts and emotions of others and yourself. The alpha state of the brain also relates to meditation. A daily meditation practice helps you control this alpha state and therefore control the intuitive process. What we gain when we meditate is a smooth theta state, being that the ability of the brain to emit such waves. In this state, creativity and intuition are presented and can lead us to a better problem solving, a more creative mind, and by enhancing the capacity of the brain to produce new neural connections. So, in the meditation process, what we want is a clear state of mind that allows us to grab these answers, ideas that are already present in our minds. But also we want to generate the ability to let go of thinking about the problem and let the solution be created by this inner layer of ourselves. Those aha moments come when we give ourselves a break from thinking on the issue and actually let the brain work on the task. The brain will continue to work on the problem by itself. All that is needed is some time and space to collect and to organize the data. And the data to come to the right conclusion. So, LP, in the Buddhist approach, what is the relationship between the brain and the mind? Is there like such a thing related to this particular relationship, or is related to what you were saying before?
Definitely. If you have a very smart brain, somehow it's like you have a computer with a very fast CPU. And that sense, the computer is able to process information faster. That's why people are maybe crazy about getting a new computer when it's being released, a new CPU, because they know that it requires less time to, like, if you work on video rendering, it's going to take you less time, right? To maybe render the whole
process.
The whole thing. But then you need to also have good software for that. So you need to make sure that you have a combination of good software, good hardware, then you'll be able to accomplish your work better. So this brain is somehow in Buddhism is more like the office for the software, which is the mind. If the mind is always able to kind of understand the perceptions, because if you talk about the 4 aggregates, one is the body, and the other 4 is perception, memory, thinking, and understanding. This is how you need to also access to different parts of the body, to access to the inputs, which are five senses, which is the layer perception, and then you need to access the brain for the memory part, and the brain for also the thinking part. And eventually, the last part is with the mind alone. This is how you really understand the context. You receive information from the input, then you store the information in registry or maybe in your brain, and then you use your brain to think and to understand, and eventually the software collects the result and processes the information. This is why a creative process will happen with the four aggregates.
Okay. So as we say,
one of the greatest things that you could do when it comes to growing your business is learn, practice, develop your intuition. Would you like to know how? Okay, so this is how it works. This is you. Okay, you're looking very good. It's important that we understand how reality works. All life forms are basically made up or composed of atoms, which are essentially electrons that are orbiting a nucleus. So we've got two atoms here, and the two atoms communicate between their electrons. Their electrons are essentially how they communicate with one another. But does anyone here know how the electrons communicate, what they use? One of the greatest things that you could do when it comes to growing your business is learn, practice, develop your intuition. Would you like to know how? Okay, so this is how it works. This is you. Okay, you're looking very good. It's important that we understand how reality works. All life forms are basically made up or composed of atoms, which are essentially electrons that are orbiting a nucleus. So we've got two atoms here, and the two atoms communicate between their electrons. Their electrons are essentially how they communicate with one another. But does anyone here know how the electrons communicate, what they use? But they use what's called a messenger particle, and the messenger particle is actually composed of light, and it's called a photon. So the photon is what is used, or light waves are what is used to communicate between atoms. Does this make sense? Okay, so here's where it gets freaky deaky. Your body is constantly releasing what is called biophotonic energy. And those photons are constantly communicating and sending information to every single atomic particle around you. And by the way, this explains many aspects of psychic behavior, and I hate the term psychic, I'm going to call it intuitive. Now, who's ever been in a situation before where you've been walking along, all of a sudden you've thought about someone, and then literally the phone has rung and they're ringing you? Do you know why you knew that they were calling? Because their intention got to you before the telephone signal did. There's two reasons people don't listen to their intuition. Number one, there's too much fucking noise, or number two, they don't trust it. But what we need to understand is that our intuition plays a much bigger game than we do. Your intuition is playing such a bigger game than you right now because it is literally connected to every form of intelligence that is available in your sphere right now. So your intuition is what is coming in. That's the information that you receive from your environment. That's the information that is present. But it is also constantly sending information. That's your intention. One of the greatest things that you...
Okay. So LP, how can we define intuition?
Well, intuition is an ability to understand. If you remember the four aggregates I talk about, okay, one is the body and the other four are the mind, right? If you perceive so many information, then you need to process information. If you have slow CPU, it means that you don't actually have an ability to process so many information. Think about how our knowledge, an ability to understand things can be limited if we keep thinking about things in orders. So if you can think about, okay, today the weather is like this, and the sun is so warm, is this global warming or what? And then there are knowledge about universe, the knowledge about politics, knowledge about economics. Everything is happening at the same time. So if we have to think about everything at the same time, then is going to be a lot of information processing. Somehow, intuition is an ability of a powerful mind to understand without having to think about. So the last layer of the mind, okay, perceiving, memory, thinking, and understanding. We have the last layer of the mind. And if the mind is powerful, we will be able to understand sometimes without thinking. It's like in the video that the guy understands that the mom is going to call, or maybe he could understand when maybe the friends was thinking about him. We have this internal communication. We will be able to understand what other people were thinking. It's like it's funny that I happen to have this idea of how my mom was going to call me at exactly the same time she called me. So I thought that maybe she was going to call me at this particular time, and I was right. Because I think this is because I know her for a long time, and somehow I didn't actually have to know what her days was about, but I was able to guess based on my intuition.
Yeah.
Just that.
It's very important. Like, I think somehow there is like a remarkable difference between the linear mind and the abstract mind, because like what we do with our intuitions is like open ourselves to have understanding based on abstract contemplations and like on abstract topics, like for example that we were talking and like that we're having we were seeing on the video, like you're thinking about someone and suddenly that someone appearing in your life, or like feeling like, I don't know, having chocolate, for example, and like you go and try to get the chocolate, but in the place where the chocolate is, you find like this information that you were missing is like some part of yourself is already connected with a even higher layer of knowledge. And like what we want to do is of course connect with that, but also gaining the ability to read this subtle language that the intuition is telling, is like communicating with us. So in this sense, what we want to understand is that intuition belongs to a non-rational state of mind. Mm-hmm. Like it's not part of the linear thoughts, it's not part of the inner talk that we have based on language. Intuition works more with sensations. Like sometimes you know that something is kind of good, but doesn't feel right. That's the difference, because you feel that this situation just doesn't feel right. Don't ask me why, but I don't feel like that. So we have some clues in the language, because you can say like, okay, I know that this is good, but somehow it doesn't feel right. Mm-hmm. If you do an analysis on the sentence itself, knowing and feeling are going through different pathways. So in this sense, we also need to be aware that the whole variety of feelings and sensations that our minds provides are also a great knowledge of understanding and like getting to the point where we want to arrive, because it's not a linear talk. Yeah, it's not like like a rational talk. It's like more an abstract contemplation or on the feelings that we're having.
Well, if I would actually compare this with a computer or CPUs again, then even in CPU they have an architecture called pipelining. It means that you are able to process so many parallel processing at the same time. So you actually need to do one-on-one. But this goes to like maybe 16 in a row or 64 in a row, and that's why they call it 64 bits. That's because you don't actually process just one-on-one. So think about the ability to process an enormous amount of data in which you can actually access and process the information of the world or maybe the whole universe. And that's why in Buddhism we pay a lot of attention on this process of attaining the intuition, because we know that when we can attain intuition level, we'll be able to understand and process information in a much larger amount.
Yeah, I think also it's very important to keep in mind that our minds are not reliable at the present moment, because they are filled with the filaments and ankylosas, if you like. So the mind that we have now is very limited, but the intuition is wide open and knows more. And sometimes, as we were looking at the video, intuition is playing a game 10 years, like 8 years, like so much more in the future, because has a more clear more clear awareness on the whole picture. So in this sense, there's a lot of people who tends to overthink the phenomena, and like for those of you, if you are watching, I would like you to consider the fact that our minds are very limited in this moment, and like Einstein said, we cannot provide a solution in the same level that the problem was created, because it will only create a better problem. We need to go to a higher level in order to generate a solution. So in this sense, intuition can be, let's say, this higher level. However, we have this another interesting video. In this case, it's going to be Tim Cook. Tim Cook is the actual CEO of Apple, but for those of you who doesn't know, he was actually working for Compaq back in the day, like you remember, like Compaq Presario on like Windows 95. So he was like on that side of the computer business. So let's see this video on how this he's an engineer. This is very important. Before we see the video, I would like to have this small talk, because this is the kind of mind which tends to be very analytical on the decision making, like based on all the facts and like A, B, C, and D. So this must be correct. But let's see how he used his intuition in order to come out with with the decision that he took back in the day. So let's see the video.
You've talked about your decision to go to Apple back in 1998, and how people forget that at that point in time, Apple was really close to extinction almost, and was certainly in the eyes of some. And you had just actually started a new job at Compaq, which was a healthy, vibrant company at the time. And so you then go to Apple shortly after having accepted this job, and you said you spent about 5 minutes talking to Steve Jobs, and your intuition told you, despite all the reasons not to do this, that this is where I should be. So my question is, given the importance that you lend to this intuition, is intuition something you're born with, or is it something that you've developed over your career so that you've kind of refined your instincts?
I think it's more the latter. I don't think that you're born with a gut. I think the gut matures and gets better and better over time. And what the struggle that most people have, I think, is learning to listen to it and figuring out how to access it in some way. For me, though, what I found was that even though I'm an engineer and an analytical person at heart, the most important decisions I've made had nothing to do with any of that. They were always based on intuition. And the Apple one is a prime example of that. You know, I remember actually forming my list of pluses and minuses, and I could not get the chart to work out the way I wanted it to. Because I wanted something to say, you know, this says I should go to Apple, but it would not. Nothing financially would do that. I talked to people I trusted that knew me, and they said, this is not what you should do. It wasn't so easy, and people said, you know, you're just crazy. You're working for the top PC company in the world. How could you even think of doing this? You've lost your mind. And yet, that voice said, go west, young man, go west. And Sometimes you just have to go for it.
Okay, we hope you enjoyed the video. And like talking about enjoying videos, why don't you share this video with your family, friends, and like create this way of communicating?
You've talked about your decision to go to Apple back in 1998 and how people forget that at that point in time, Apple was really close to extinction
as we
almost,
saw in the
and
video,
was certainly in the eyes of some. And yet,
and
you just actually started a new job at Compaq, which was a healthy, vibrant company at the time.
Means that
And so you then go to Apple shortly after having accepted this job,
right?
and you said you spent about 5 minutes talking to Steve Jobs, and your intuition told you, despite all the reasons not to do this, that this is where I should be. So my question is, given the importance that you lend to this intuition, is intuition something you're born with, or is it something that you've developed over your career so that you've kind of refined your instincts?
I think it's more the latter. I don't think that you're born with a gut. I think the gut matures
but your mind's not very
gets better and better over time. And
so what we want to do,
the struggle that most people have, I think, is learning to listen to it
better understanding
and figuring out how to access it in some way. For me, though, what I found was
clear our minds and to listen to our intuitions.
That even though I'm an engineer,
have you ever heard about inner voices?
Inner voices?
Yes.
I have like 10. Yeah.
The most
All right. Basically, there are two kinds of inner voices. Good inner voices and bad inner voices.
The Apple one is a prime
Somehow
example
when we
I remember actually
about to work on
forming
something,
my list
of course there will always be two voices in our head, the good voice and the bad voice.
To work out the way I
the bad voice may try to encourage us, like, okay, don't do it, it's not going to be good,
I should go to Apple.
You're not going to be able to do it, it's going to be too difficult.
There was
but
nothing
then,
financially would do that.
if you have good voices, the good voices will tell you, you can do it, this is going to be right, this is very important. This is
not
very, it's something that you've been looking for a long time.
So easy. And
these good
say,
voices are very meaningful somehow.
You're working for
and sometimes,
top PC company
if
in the
we didn't
world,
actually do anything with our mind, we have a lot of thoughts, we have a lot of
mind.
worries, that will only be accelerating and amplifying negative voices. But if you clear your mind, the positive voices will be louder. And sometimes the positive voices will not only be just encouraging voices, but it also contains information, contains knowledge that maybe you were just overlooked. So this is how we first, we lower the negative voices and we allow the positive voices to be amplified.
You've talked about your decision
and second,
to go to Apple.
Not only the voices, but when you look at your ideas and when your mind is clear, then you will be able to look clearer into, like if you look at the bottom of the lake, if the water of the lake is not clear, then you don't see anything in the lake. So you need to make sure that the water is clear. It is the same way that we have to also clear the mind from the thoughts that are not, it's like blocking the real idea or the real answer. And the last one is when you meditate, you feel more relaxed. Of course, if you feel stressed, if you don't feel relaxed, you will never be able to be very confident with the positive voice. You're going to be very reluctant in doing something.
You're born with, or is it something that you've
if you remember
Archimedes
is a philosopher, and eventually he discovered how to measure the volume of gold. And he's been working on the method for, I think, for weeks, for months, but he could not even actually find out how to do that until one day he was just relaxing himself in a bar. And at that moment, he just discovered that the amount of water that leaked from the bathtub should be equivalent to
Yeah,
the volume
even
of his
though I'm
body.
an engineer
And eventually he shouted to himself,
and an
Eureka!
analytical
He
person
found
at
the
heart,
knowledge when
the
he
most
was in the
important
bathtub.
decisions I've
That is not
made
when he was
had nothing to do
thinking
with any
very
of that.
hard, because sometimes
They
when he
were
was
always
thinking
based on
super hard,
intuition.
that didn't
And the
actually
Apple
lead
one
him
is
to
a
any
prime example
solutions.
of that.
As
I
Albert Einstein
remember,
said, that
actually,
you need
forming
to
my list of
make sure
pluses
that
and
your
minuses.
mind is clear.
And I could
You
not
can't
get
solve
the
a
chart
problem
to work
with
out the way I
the
wanted
mind
it to.
that created it.
Because
So
I
if your
wanted
mind is still
something
in
to
doubt
say,
with
you know,
all the
this says I should
problems
go to
and
Apple.
worries, then you
But
will
it
be,
would
you will
not.
never be able to solve
There was
anything.
nothing
And
financially would
first,
do
you don't
that.
actually have that intuition, and second,
talked
you are
to
not going to
people
be
I
able to
trusted
be
that
confident
knew me,
with the
and they
solutions. That
said,
maybe that is
"This
the right
is
solution,
not
but you
what
just
you should do."
feel very
It wasn't so
not
easy,
very
and
confident
people
about it.
said,
Yeah.
you know, you're
We
just
touched a
crazy.
couple
You're
of
working
topics
for
that
the
are very
top
interesting,
PC
like,
company in the
I don't
world.
know if have
How could
happened
you
to
even think
that
of doing this? You've
we
lost
have
your
this
mind.
double talk. Like,
And yet,
okay, we have like the good voice.
That
which is
voice
saying,
said,
like,
"Go west,
encouraging
young
voice,
man.
if you like.
Go west."
And the other one, somehow stronger
And
voice and like taking
sometimes you
over,
just have to go for
like
it.
the sabotager, you know, like these side, these aspects of ourselves that is trying to protect us, but based in a very old, as keeping the comparison to computers, in a very old code. So what we need is to actualize the code and like let the sabotager like beneath, like bye bye to the sabotager, because what happens is like the voice that is like taking us down is based on an aspect of our minds that is very old, and it doesn't trust that we are going to be able to do the thing. It's kind of protecting us from things that we don't want to experience, such as failure or disencouragement or like being rejected, a lot of things. So this kind of voice for us is like the voice which is trying to protect us. So we need to meditate in order to actualize the code, to have a better code of understanding running in our minds. Like we need to dismantle the sabotager. And the other one is like about Archimedes and the aha moments. Like when your mind relaxes, is like when the idea, like the solution comes. For those of us who enjoy art, there is this Italian artist. It's called John Fontcuberta, and like he came out with a new way of painting, which was, instead of painting, he was like pulling the canvas with nails and things and adding light. So he was able to come out with this way of playing with light in his paintings, like, and when he was describing the process on how he arrived to that moment, he told, like, I was just laying down, I just like relaxed and falling asleep, and eureka, the solution come, because the mind was working on that. But since we sometimes tend to overthink about something, what we are actually doing is preventing the answer to come. So as Archimedes happened with Archimedes, with this artist, and as have happened to us, I'm sure that all of us have had these aha moments at some point in our lives. So it's very important for us that we understand that sometimes what we need is to release the necessity to be in control, or thinking that we are in control, because we're actually pretty much never in control. Just like the only thing that we can control is pretty much our mind and how we react to the external world. So this can, so yeah, we will gonna show you this video about Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs have this great talk in this graduation college. So we are going to show this little extract of this talk, so that to encourage you to listen and follow your intuition. Okay?
Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. Don't be trapped by dogma, which is living with the results of other people's thinking. Don't let the noise of others' opinions drown out your own inner voice. And most important, have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. They somehow already know, what you truly want to become. Everything.
Okay, we are back. Well, so this is really so far we have been discussing about like intuition and like decision making, if you like. We have seen these leaders and speakers and like all these examples that we have discussed, but now the time comes to talk about creativity. Again, the act of creating itself belongs to a non-rational aspect of our minds. When you are creating, for example, a painting or something, when you are mixing the colors, you just know that those color goes along, or no, it's not a formula in your mind saying you this yes, this no. You just feel. In this sense, in the Zen branch of Buddhism that is very well practiced in Japan, and I think some parts of China, not sure, they have what they call the Zen arts. The Zen arts includes archery. In this sense, what the archer, the arrow, and the arc should be the same thing at the moment the arrow is liberated. So there is like no difference in between the instrument, the person, and the mind. In this moment, it's just like you realize emptiness by being the same, all the things at the same time. So in this, this is a Zen practice, and like this to the idea is to train your mind on understanding this kind of phenomena of emptiness and like no thingness, which is like another topic, but it's very interesting. I'm really interested in that. And they have another practices such as calligraphy. Again, it's like you need to develop an empty mind in order to let the brush talk, in order to let the ink talk, so that by having this empty mind, you have these moments of awareness and like you express your creativity. You can play the video, Nari. So, for example, in some other, when you're practicing arts, like it's very important that you keep in mind that what you are practicing is an abstract contemplation of phenomena that goes inside your mind. So, for example, there is this practice which is called ikebana. For instance, they are in ikebana is the Japanese practice of arranging flowers, and the elements are delicately chosen and arranged, considering the whole picture and how the elements interact with each other, and in general context, avoiding as much as possible the interruption of linear or rational thinking. The prime intention of these practices, like Zen gardens, arranging flowers, and calligraphy, is to let the pure understanding arise via contemplation. So when it comes to creativity, you can practice this in your daily life. Like I remember, for example, last week we were having a dinner and we have this set of beautiful desserts. So by just putting the desserts in a beautiful way in a dish, you are practicing this kind of interaction. Like you are not thinking. Like for example, in my case, I don't know if like you like to do it. I like to set altars. So I put my images, crystals, and beautiful things, feathers, like the things that I like. So you can practice this kind of interaction with this inner sense of you, like this inner body, like this non-linear conversation. You can have it practicing observation and contemplation without judgment of the phenomena. So this is another interesting talk that we would like to have here. So, for example, how can we have the Four Noble Truths, being the fourth one, the Noble Eightfold Path. I think the seventh branch of the Noble Eightfold Path is right mindfulness. So, if this is right, LP, you will guide me, please. How can the right mindfulness be related to contemplation, and how can this lead us to develop this sense of creativity and intuition from your side?
Basically, we have to understand first that the Noble Eightfold part, talking about, begins with the right mindset, which it has another name, the right view. So you have the right view, you have the whole picture, you have nothing to hide you the truth. Okay, and that right view is going to influence the way you think. That is called right thinking. The way you speak, that is called right speaking. The way you act, that is called right actions. The way you live your life, that is called right livelihood. But this can even develop into the second round, the third round, the fourth round. So many folds, many manifestation of the right view. So it could be the right view, an even better and even clearer view or something like that. But in order for this to upgrade, then you need to do something. That's why we have right effort, right mindfulness, and right meditation. To what? To empower the mind, so that the mind becomes more powerful in the way that the mind can really stay focused longer. The mind really feel more relaxed, and the mind has less contemplation. Less contaminations. Yes, and eventually you will be able to have a clearer view of what the mind will project about, what the mind will take into the account. And that is the second time, the third time, the fourth time. That's how meditation, as a part of this Noble Eightfold part, is going to upgrade your view. It's going to upgrade your intuition, because eventually it's not just the view, but how you process all the view. Eventually, I could compare this with what we call artificial intelligence. We talk about computer, we talk about software, intuition. These days you can compare with artificial intelligence. So it means that this can run in different computers. It can run in a supercomputer. It can run in, even these days we have artificial intelligence in smartphones. So if you have the right AI or the right machine learning process, the right logic, eventually you can provide better reasoning. And this artificial intelligence can derive better knowledge. You can imagine a software called Siri. Maybe a few years ago, if you ask Siri one question, she doesn't actually answer anything. But after a few years, and actually maybe Google AI is better in this sense, right? You ask something. Even these days, there is a video a few months ago showing how, I think, his name is Sundar Pichai. He actually used an AI to make reservation into a restaurant. And that is very smooth, like really like a real person.
A real conversation.
Yes.
Yeah.
In fact, I believe that the whole hardware is not going to be necessarily much more powerful, but somehow the logic itself has been refined. And this is how you actually developed your artificial intelligence, your AI, inside yourself without changing the body. It's just how you meditate, then you upgrade the software, and when you upgrade the software, eventually all the logics will also be sorted. And the important logics, significant logics, will gain more priority, and that is how the AI part got upgraded.
Great, this topic of artificial intelligence is fantastic. We can have a great conversation on that because there's such a good comparison. Thank you for bringing light on that. I think we're almost coming to an end. Before that, we would like to present you, I don't know, for those of you who like cinema, David Lynch. David Lynch runs a foundation. Well, he's a fantastic director. If you haven't seen him, I 100% recommend him, because he's so good. One of the reasons why because why he's so good is because he's been practicing transcendental meditation for over 30 years or something like that. And like he actually runs a foundation based on spreading the meditation. So all of his creative processes are based on the relationship between meditation, intuition, and actually filmmaking, which is fantastic topic, and like the way he expresses his ideas, and like he's got such an interesting mind. So let's see this video about him and his creative process, and let's keep on track.
No, I'm not. I don't know what my name is. I don't know who I am.
I'm trying to stay true to the ideas, translate them to film in a way that feels correct. And so some of these ideas are more abstract than others. But we have this beautiful thing called intuition. And abstractions exist way more in real life, so-called real life. And and we use this intuition to get a sense of things, find the truth of something. Like detectives, we go. And the same, instruments can be used in cinema. And it's so beautiful to intuit a thing and come up with something that satisfies you. And I always say it's like looking at an abstract painting. There's the painting. It never changes, just like the frames on the film. But a viewer comes up, and this circle is created. Into the viewer, the painting into the viewer, back to the painting. And every viewer is going to get a different thing from that. But the thing they get is for them, and it's precious, it's beautiful. The beautiful thing is the doing. And if you would love your work, that's the greatest blessing.
No, I'm...
Okay. So you're back on track. Should we I don't know if you have any questions. Do you have any questions on the platform, or there is something else to add? Help you. What will be your wrap up of this conversation? What will be like your sentences or your thoughts about this?
The Lord Buddha said that the most important to understand the truth is an ability to actually become one with the nature. And I think that's the meaning of intuition. That's the meaning of enlightenment. The real word is, of course, enlightenment is the ability to become one with the nature and understand every part of it. And that is not possible by just thinking. You can't actually think about the whole universe and then you understand the truth. No one has ever done that before. So if you take a look at how the Buddha attained that enlightenment, because in Tripitaka, it has some stories that he talk about universe, he talk about galaxies, he talk about stars, he talks about even a unit that is so small, that is like 10 to the power of minus 10. Eventually that becomes the size of an atom. So this is how actually he, just by meditating, because the way he attained that enlightenment is when he closed his eyes under a tree, actually is a Bodhi tree. And then he closed his eyes, he meditate. Just by empowering the mind, eventually his mind access the power of enlightenment. And that is how he actually be able to understand other people's feeling into the future, things about the past, and even the whole world of surroundings, maybe the whole universe. So it's very important for us to pay attention to these intuitions as well, because eventually you don't actually have to think about something. Sometimes the answer just pop up, and that's how Steve Jobs say when he came to the East, he went to India. What he really gained from living in India is the power to understand the true feelings of like the meanings of everything without having to think about everything rationally. And if you actually is a fan of movies, you probably know about a movie called Star Wars because it has so many episodes and people love that. Star Wars, Steven Spielberg, for example, he actually was about to do a movie that no one wanted. Even producers and publishers, no one really cared about a movie that talks about fantasy world of people fighting in different planets. They really focused at that time about what happened in the world. So eventually, when Spielberg presented this movie to different studios, they didn't actually care about the shares or how they're going to make profits with the movie later on. And they give Spielberg all the rights to his merchandise later, and that's make him become really a billionaire. So he really believed that that was going to work, but no one else could see that. The picture that was in his mind, it came because intuition that he had in the mind. So whenever we are able to have a clear intuition of something in our life, even though that might go against other people's feeling, that might go against statistics and maybe economics, maybe any books that were in the markets, you just have to believe it because nothing is always right. But somehow your story, this is what you actually have to write on your own. Your story can be right on your context, on obstacles you're facing. And if you have that intuition, you'll be able to solve your problems without relying on anyone to help you. And that's the magical power which meditation can help you achieve that intuition for real.
Great. I think there is one thing I would like to add as well.
Yes.
And it's very important that we listen to our bodies because our mind speaks a language, but intuition speaks it, as we've been discussing this whole hour, in another set of language, including sensations. So, for example, as you were saying right now, that's because this emerged in my mind. Like when Steve Jobs came to India, and he came to this understanding on you should feel the things instead of thinking about them that much. Somehow, if you tune with this, with your center, if you like, you will be able to feel the things and to stop thinking in a particular language. We tend to think in the language that we were raised, but if you lower the volume of this talk and somehow get in tune with the language of your center, you will understand that it's very much sensations and feelings and subtle changes of energy rather than a linear talk like reading a book. So yeah, this is coming to my mind. So I think this is somehow a nice tool to train on that, right? So yeah. Well, I think we just came to an end. If you have something more to say, if you have questions, we perhaps can answer them a little bit after. But yes, so I think for now, this was Creativity, Intuition, and Meditation with LP John and this guest, Farid Cortez. So we want to see you next time. Please share the video, tag people who you think will be interested in this topic because perhaps they will be extracting knowledge and gaining some insights and understanding. And yeah, LP.
Yes, thank you very much. And I believe that intuition is what we can develop, and even we don't actually have to change our whole bodies. Like I mentioned, it's just the same computer, but if the logic has been upgraded, then we can achieve something amazing, and that potentially can change our life because just by thinking, just by the formal analytical process we've been using in our life, contemplating a lot, and that's probably not the best way to understand our life, to live a happy life, and also to get rid of the uncomfortable feelings and all the worries at the same time. So the word of leaning into a very accurate intuition, I think it's worth trying. And if you're interested, we have meditation courses, and also the upcoming talks, we are going to focus on meditation and how we use meditation to relate to any particular issues in our lives as well. So until then, if you have any questions, you can ask, and if you like to suggest any topics that we should cover, you can also suggest in the comments. And we'll see you again next week. By then, we're going to prepare some videos for you. So please subscribe to the page and share the page with your friends as well. And until then, goodbye.